Hey guys, welcome to the Max. Today is going to be a good video. We're going to talk about the recession, and now that we're in a recession, finally, with them admitting that our economy is tanking, we need to see, as we're in the recession, are we moving towards a depression, which is not what we want. So let's talk about some of the things that you need to be keeping your eye on to see if this is going to put us in a depression, or can we pull out of it. So let's talk about some of that stuff. Today's video starts right now.
Drive the same roads every day. We both get there our own way. Thistle and an apple tree. How different do
Today's video is going to be a little bit more on the current events and how we are now sitting in a recession, finally admitting to the fact that we feel our wallets being drained a little bit. Let's talk about some of the ways that we are going to make ourselves get through this recession, but also prepare ourselves just in case it gets a little worse and moves into a depression. One thing we don't want to see is the style depression that we've had before, the Great Depression. We do not want to see that again. Our economy, our world, the people of America are not prepared nearly as good as some of the people were in the Great Depression. Yes, we do have technology, and yes, we are in more of a modern world. However, not living in a modern world, a lot of people living on farms still are living in rural areas where they could grow their own food, a little bit more independence from where we're at now. It still was hard. So we don't want that to happen again. So now let's talk about some of the things that are showing that there are signs of another depression coming and how you can prepare for them. Okay, so we see a lot of things that are leading to this recession, but also how it's pushing towards a depression. Now, the difference in this recession and this depression is we've never had the amount of debt that we have now as a nation. We have never been in as much credit card debt as consumers as we have been now in our populace. We've never seen the polarization that we've seen to where we can't really unite as a whole, no matter around one thing. Now, we're all, there's always been people on the left, people on the right, people in the center. However, there was times in our culture where we would tend to kind of come together as an America and stand united in some fronts against something. We're not there anymore. It's amazing how polarized our nation has gotten. So therefore, there's some signs that we need to be looking for, and also something that we just need to think about. Okay, if we go into a recession, which we are in, if we go into a depression, are we going to be ready for it, and how you can prepare your family? So let's talk about some of the things you need to be looking for that's showing signs of a depression may be coming. So number one, of course, is things we've been talking about is food scarcity. It's not the fact that food shortage is just running rampant in America yet, but what we have seen is there is a shortage of food. We have put ourselves in a global style market to where everyone depends on everyone else. Well, that's okay when everybody's doing good. But in the cases where there's wars, in the cases where there are countries that can't grow the crops they were growing, in cases where the climate has changed a little bit and we see droughts in some of the areas, all that plays into it. So food scarcity is a big thing. Now, food scarcity is not just saying, can I get 10 cheeses at Walmart? It may be the fact that in the West right now, hay is costing double what it should cost. So therefore, it's going to make your beef cost more, which ultimately is going to cost you more at the grocery store or buying it right off hoof from a butcher. So we need to make sure we understand that food scarcity doesn't just mean there's a shortage of food. We're talking there's food scarcity with the fact of it costs you X amount of dollars to buy just a simple fast food burger in town. It costs 30% more to pick up eggs or milk at the store, and how that's cutting into your own money and your own wallet. So when we talk about that, let's think about that a little bit deeper. We're in more debt as a nation and as a people, as a consumer, than we've ever been. There is actually, I think it was around half the population does not even have $1,000 in savings. Now, I'm not looking down on that. I'm not talking about that in a pessimistic way. But what I am saying is when we don't have a lot of self-sufficient ways and self-reliant ways, then we tend to lean on the government more and more. So that's what we've seen. The government investing in food more. What we're going to see is the government controlling food more. So now that brings up to the second point of water issues. Now, we've talked about water rights, and that's been an issue that we've talked about in probably about 3 or 4 videos. And if you hadn't checked out those videos, go down there and check them out. But ultimately, if the government is now over food, and they are now having a little bit more input in water because there's droughts in certain areas, so therefore the governments are stepping in saying, wait, hey, we may need to conserve this water, or we may not can catch this water off your roof. We can't do catchment systems because that normally feeds our streams, and we have to have that as a government. Now, I know there is a boundary there, and I know there is a balance there. We don't need to be wasteful of our water. We need to be frugal, especially for some of those areas that are going through some of the drought issues. However, when we get to the point, again, with food, with water, when we say, okay, we may not can get through this point, we need subsidies, or we may not can make it through this, the government's going to step in and help us with water or help us with food. The government's good about spending things, so we think, oh, well, they're helping. Well, really, the government's never really helped correctly. A lot of the problems that we're having with food and water could go back to the facts of some of the ways that the government has manipulated parts of their policies to make food and water harder to get or to make it more regulated. So we need to be putting our eyes on food and water and also putting up as much as we can. Now, we talk about that in all the videos. That's kind of the first step of prepping and survival, is making sure you control your food and water. But that's not really the point of the video. We're going to go a little bit depth on the government's overregulation of those things, but also what we need to be looking for, because if we're not prepared that way, when all this other stuff happens and the depression comes, are we going to be able to sustain and be self-reliant or work as a community, or are we just going to fall to the fact that we need government to step in and help us, quote unquote, help us? So it brings up to one more point, which is number 3, is going to be the electricity issues that we're having. So you see people fighting over clean energy, oil. We see people fighting over what is clean. Are we going to run these pipelines this way? Are we depending strictly on the grid and we're not going to have any coal? We're going to run solar and wind. All those are great discussions to have. And do I believe in all of them? I believe every one of those have a place in what we're doing. Solar and wind are good in certain areas of our country, and really in certain areas such as Australia, they may be wonderful. In Africa, they may be wonderful. However, in Europe and some of you guys who are living in those northern climates, solar and wind tend to not do as well for you. So it may be nuclear, it may be some other kind of clean energy, it may be coal or petroleum. We need to make sure that we're using all facets of what we've gotten right now to build up our energy, to build up our electricity, to build up our grid, because ultimately when one of those fails, we have the others to rely on. We tend to say we're not going to pump fuel here, but we're allowing the other part of the world to pump. So just like, for instance, let's just, for one commonality here, we're in money bonds. We have more debt as a nation than we've ever had. No matter what you thought of the last presidency or this presidency, we stocked up our oil reserves to the peak and the most it's ever been in the last presidency, and we bought it at a cheaper rate because the gas was down and oil was down and fuel was down. Now we're using a lot of that reserve for things that we shouldn't be using it for, and selling it to other countries that we should not be selling it to, because it wasn't set for that, but it was a reserve for us as America. Because of that, we're going to have to replace that. Well, our current administration says they're going to replace it kind of at the end of the year. Well, so now we have used fuel that cost us hardly nothing to put in there, and now we're going to use tax dollars that we don't have, with inflation through the roof, to then turn around and put fuel back into the reserve that we sold at a lower price to a country across the world. Now, that was a major rabbit to chase there, but what I'm saying is that's not good policy. So when we allow our energy to be so manipulated by, it could be government, it could be big business, however you're looking at it, we need to make sure that we're doing all we can to build up our electricity in our grid. Also, personally, I put it back on you as a consumer. Don't be reliant just on your energy from the grid. You need to have other means necessary, such as a propane tank for your generator, a gas generator. You need to have a solar generator or a little battery back operation just in case to get you through hard times. You need to have ways that you can be self-reliant with electricity, or you need to learn to inconvenience yourself enough to where if you lose the grid, you're not losing your livelihood. You're not losing all your food. So you need to make sure you're preserving those foods that you have bought in bulk. Make sure they're not dependent strictly on the grid. So 1, 2, and 3 go very handily together. You've got issues with electricity, issues with food, and issues with water. Those 3 things makes a stress on the consumers that are purchasing. It makes a stress on everyone involved, especially for the middle class and lower class. It's always going to hit us a lot harder than it may hit government or the higher class of society. So because of those 3 things, we're going to start seeing these next few steps that is going to make us really think, are we going towards the depression? What are some of the other things that we're going to start seeing, and that will kind of lead us to a depression? Well, we've seen our currency devalued. We see that the currency that we have is the world currency. However, because we are devaluing our dollar and we're making inflation issues by printing as much as we can instead of conserving that, we're seeing that the dollar is inflated, which is causing global issues. Because of that, we're seeing more people on the world stage utilize different forms of money than just America's money, which is the dollar. The dollar has been so strong because the world depended on it. If the world does not depend on the dollar, then the devaluation of the dollar, the fact that our government is not helping our dollar grow, it could cause some issues with our savings. It could cause issues with our retirements. It could cause issues with our buying power. You know, our inflation has definitely cost us more at the pump. It's cost us more for buying used vehicles and new vehicles. It's cost us more buying food. So it's not the fact that you may not have a lot of money because it was given to you and we see the government just pumping in our system. Inflation means we have a lot of dollars trying to chase goods that are not there. So we have printed way too many dollars. Because of that, our interest rates are now getting ticked up so they can kind of control inflation. The problem with that, and again, the devaluing of America in our dollar, is the more that we uptick the interest rate like we did in the 70s, 80s when we saw the inflation like we did, we didn't have the debt as a nation like we do now. So our debt has now, skyrocketed. Not only that, our spending has skyrocketed. Now we're raising our interest rate to try to curve the inflation. All the while, we're causing more of Americans to struggle buying a house, borrowing money, and you're starting to see the government have to pay more on the debts that we have to other countries. Because when we raise the interest rate, when the Fed raises the interest rate, it also raises the interest rate on the government debt that they pay out. So that is not a good problem. That's not hedging that's hedging inflation, but it's also adding a lot more money that's got to be paid to other foreign countries of interest. Also, be watching the fact that China has sold a lot of our treasury bonds. Some of the biggest bondholders still that's left is Japan and our Fed. Well, Japan, their market and their economy is in worse shape than ours. So what's going to happen when we see the devaluation of the dollar? We see some of these other countries who are holding our debts and is holding our dollars, and all of a sudden, one of their economies tank. It's going to be like a domino effect. So we need to make sure that we're doing all that we can to protect our own savings and our own dollars. So the devaluation of currency is huge. Does that mean the government's going to move to a digital currency? I hope not, but that's kind of the way it's leaning. So for you, are you doing, are you putting up precious metals? Are you buying antiquities? Are you buying firearms? Are you putting your stocks and mutual funds in things like natural resources such as, uraniums and lithiums and all this stuff that, since we're pushing to green energy, are you investing the right way? You need to reevaluate everything that has asset value and all your monies. We're going to see a transition very, very soon. So make sure you're doing all that you can to say, I'm going to protect my dollars. And if that means keeping a lot of dollars out, if that means buying more assets or antiquities or real estate, if that means putting more food up because ultimately food's value is going up, so that's an investment of sorts, or is it putting in precious metals or crypto or whatever you're looking at? I'm not saying invest in anything. I'm saying make a decision and make a wise decision to learn. If we devalue our currency, what do we look for next to take care of us? If it's bartering, What are we going to barter? I have a great video on bartering, but what are we putting up to take care of our family? When the devaluation of our currency happens, when we see the fact that food is scarce, water is scarce, energy may not can be paid for, people are struggling with the grid, then we start seeing businesses struggle. So what's that mean? That means massive unemployment. Now, if we start seeing these things like a domino effect, the devaluation of our currency, food and water get scarce and the government's having to step in for those things, businesses get scared. They're going to stop spending money. They're going to also minimize maybe their workforce. So you're going to see massive unemployment. Massive unemployment then causes hysteria. It causes people to get panicked, because then all of a sudden you've taken the fact that money is changing. Now you've taken the way that they make money, and now you're putting it in a situation where we are now being more dependent on the government. So now unemployment skyrockets. So who do they look for to take care of them during that time? Well, it's the federal government. Do you see all these steps happening? All these steps are domino effects that are going to hurt the consumer, hurts the middle class, hurts the lower class, but ultimately it makes us more relied upon the government, which is scary. All of a sudden you lose your job. Do you have 3 to 6 months of income saved up? Do you have other means of food put up? If you're not, do you have 6 months of food put up? Do you have a year's worth of food put up? Do you have 3 to 7 years worth of food put up? We need to make sure that we're doing all that we can to prepare for those steps, because when one thing happens, it's going to be a domino effect, almost like fireworks. You're going to light one, it's going to light all the rest. Because of all those things, you have an uneasy America. No matter what side of the political aisle you're on, we all need to eat, we all need to drink, we all need to take care of ourselves, we all have community, we all have a home, and we want to stay there. We all want energy, we all want convenience. What we tend to see, because we're so polarized, if all these things start happening, then what's going to happen? People are going to maybe be violent, maybe you'll see more riots, no matter what side you're on, if it's going to be for food or if it's going to be for some kind of issues that are happening that's been put in place. Because you're going to see more violence, or because you're going to see more riots, then you're going to see a more heavier hand of government step in. Because now the government is needed, quote unquote needed, to step in and fill the gaps of where your money is now devalued, where you need food and water, where you need a police state because, pandemonium's going on. All those things are just one step away from happening. Now, we don't want any of that to happen. I hope none of that happens. I hope I'm completely wrong. But what we're going to see is just a domino effect of those things to start to happen. And then where are we going to be at? What are we supposed to do? If we wake up and all these things start happening this week, what's your plan and what's your goals? So we talked about the problems. Now let's talk about the solutions. So we talk about food scarcity. Make sure you're growing as much food as you can. Make sure you are preserving as much food as you can. Learn to pressure can. Learn to dehydrate. Learn to forage. You need to be putting up a lot of food. If you can't grow food, take a day and ride out into a national forest when, again, you can right now. Learn to forage out of the national forest. Learn to utilize the grounds and means that you can. If it's hunting season, hunt. If it's fishing season in your areas, fish. By having some of those things, you can put it up for yourself. You can learn those skills and be more self-reliant, more self-sufficient. I have videos on things that you can buy, things you can pick up, and you need to look at that option. But not everything can be bought. If money is struggling or you're living paycheck to paycheck, you need to learn skills that can help you barter your time, maybe for food. Maybe bartering your time at a local farm or market garden or garden center. You can say, look, I can't grow food, but I can do whatever I can to work for you, and you can pay me in this row. If you let me just grow one row of food at your place so we can feed our family. There's different ways that you can say, I'm not as worried about food and water, because you can start putting that stuff up now. It's never too late to start prepping and survival. A lot of times you'll hear people say, oh, it's too late, you can't do anything about it now. Don't think like that. There's always hopes. You need to make sure you're doing all that you can to stockpile food. If you don't have but $5 to $10 extra a week, budget better and try to save money to then buy food before it becomes too late. Of the valuation of our dollar, are you watching your retirement? Are you keeping a close eye on what you're invested in? Are you watching the value of your home? Are you watching the value of your land? Do you have a vehicle that you may not need that you could sell before it gets too tough, that you can put some money up? Or are you investing in a vehicle that you can turn around and make sure it's paid for and it's yours that you can utilize? Yes, I do need cash, and I'm going to stockpile as much cash as we can. I'd say take it out of the banks, take a good chunk out of the bank to where you have a good amount of cash on hand. Does that mean your cash is going to be worth anything? We don't know that, but it's better to have it than not have it. Also, look at options such as precious metals. Look at options such as, other means of food that is has bartering capabilities. Look at ways that you can have antiquities and guns and ammo. Those things are worth a lot of money. Food, again, is worth a lot of money. You can't eat a dollar bill, but you can eat peanut butter. So there's different ways that you can hedge against maybe the devaluation of the dollar that may be coming. With that, all that brings into unemployment. You have to become more budget oriented and get out of debt. You have to do all you can to pile as much money as you can towards the debt before the dollar gets even more devalued. Don't go borrow any extra money. Don't go buy that new vehicle. Don't go out and eat all the time. You need to learn to put up as much money as you can, get on a strict budget, and put money up and pay off your debts. Because if you lose your job, can you survive more than a month or 2 months or 3 months? Or are you just going to have to get on the government's dole? You don't want to be dependent on the government. Buy that generator. Have some solar options. Have some lighting mechanisms just in case you lose power. If the grid goes down, you need to have a plan. We have videos on that. You can look at those. There's things that are very economic in those videos, and there's some things that cost a good chunk of money in those videos. Whatever your budget is, there's something for you that you can learn and get wisdom and gain wisdom from those videos. So check those out. People are going to go crazy. So you need to make sure you are protecting your home, you're becoming the gray man, you're protecting your family, and you have everything you need to secure what you have. If you have something and people know you have something, they're going to want to come get it because they need it. So you need to have ways to protect yourself and protect your family. If you can't protect yourself by yourself, if your family unit cannot protect your home and your assets and all the things, learn to gain friendship and the community that you can work together and go through the issues together. Learn skills that you can help benefit someone else. Help other people. There's nothing wrong with helping other people. My wife's a nurse, so there may be things that she can teach someone that I can't. There may be ways that I can teach somebody about an animal. There may be ways that somebody can teach me how to sew or to fix something that I can't fix. I'm not good with cars and mechanics, but if I have a community person who is working with me and I'm helping him, he can help me. It's a bartering transition, and it's something that we can work together to get through these hard times that we're fixing to go through. Now, all in all, I hope a depression doesn't take place. I hope we pull it out, and I hope everything goes back to just being awesome. That's what I really hope. I really hope that we rely on Christ and that we can heal as a nation and strengthen and be better as a human populace together. We're not so polarized. But I don't know if that's going to take place. And if it doesn't, or if it does, the bottom line is if you're prepared to face some of these things that are looming, and you see these dominoes before they start falling, and you start making preparations for these dominoes to fall, it's sure going to benefit you in the long run. Guys, hope this video helps. Hope there's some little nugget that you can grab out of this content that will help you along your way to prepping, survival, and taking care of your family. Learn to be self-reliant. Learn to be self-sufficient. Being inconvenienced a little bit is not bad. It helps us to become better. It helps us to grow as a man or as a human, to know that you can face some of the hard things that may be coming our way. Have hope and know that you can make it through it. Ultimately, Jesus is the key. So with that, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. God bless. Happy homesteading, y'all.